Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiremat. Most of you know something about the Sharana movement which took place in the 12th century of Common Era in Karnataka, India. The movement was a unique and distinguished one. It became voice of the voiceless. So many Vachanakaras composed their Vachanas even though they were illiterate. What they were uttered in Anubhava Mantapa, that is the hall of experience that was recorded and kept in the custody of Channabasavana. So it was a movement against the casteism, hierarchy in the society, and discrimination against gender, and of course against the illegal property. So many unknown persons participated in that movement. It becomes a historical moment in the history of the world. It introduced so many persons to the lovers of literature, to the strugglers, to the truth-seeking and rational minds in this world. Mahadevi Akka is one of them. Mahadevi Akka is popularly known as Akka Mahadevi. But Akka is a name given to her at Anubhava Mantapa, that is the hall of experience, the hall of enlightenment. What is given to her at that time becomes her name also. Mahadevi Akka, alias Akka Mahadevi, was born in Uditadi, a village in the Shikaripur taluk of Shivamogga district in modern Karnataka of India. It was ironical. She was born in a place very near to another spiritual Vachanakara, that is Allama Prabhu. But anyhow, at that time, she did not know about Allama Prabhu, but as she grew up, she came to know something about Allama Prabhu. Her father was Nirmala Shetty and mother was Sumiti, that is what it told, and different that parental origin is not that much of proper in some cases. There are divided opinions regarding the parents of so many Vachanakaras. So anyhow, now it has been taken that Nirmala Shetty and Sumati were the parents of Mahadevi Akka. They were devotees of Shiva. They were Veerashaivas. So Mahadevi Akka was initiated into Shiva Diksha at the age of 10. But actually, in Veerashaivas, the Shiva Diksha was given, the Shiva Diksha is given at a time when a child is in the womb of a mother. But officially, it has been initiated as and when. But anyhow, Mahadevi Akka was very beautiful. She was decent. She was cultured. One day, the chieftain of that area, Mr. Kaushik, saw her. He was attracted to her beauty and he wanted to have her at any cost. So he forced her father to give her to him. But Kaushika was a Jain. He was not a devotee of Shiva. That is why parents did not allow it. They protested it. As a chieftain of the town, he forced on, and Mahadevi came to know it, and she accepted on 3 conditions. Those conditions were very peculiar. She would come to his palace. She would live in his palace, but she would not be disturbed by anyone. And Mr. Kaushik should not touch her at any time, should not go very near to her at any time. And Jangamas, that is the Virakta Gurus, that is the propagators of Veerashaivism, were allowed to enter into the palace, and daily she wanted to worship them. And they should be allowed to have a sacred offering. And third one, if in her stay during that period, he touched her, it would be a break of the promise. Then and there only she would leave him. Of course, Kaushika, as infatuated to her, accepted that. So time went on. Being an infatuated one, Kaushika could not tolerate. He could not control Panchamahabhutas. He could not control desire and lust. So one day he furthered towards her, and Mahadevi Akka did not tolerate it. And as he broke her condition, he decided to leave the place, and he removed all his offerings. He removed even the clothes and left the palace and went in search of Channamallikarjuna in a dress. It was a very unique protest, because whenever someone wanted to protest it, he would not remove his clothes or her clothes generally, especially a woman could not remove her clothes. But in case of Mahadevi Akka, she removed her clothes completely and she went in naked position, spreading her hairs round her body. Of course, she went in dress in the streets, and she went in search of Channamallikarjuna because she was in love with Channamallikarjuna. Channamallikarjuna was an incarnation of Shiva. He was not a boy. He was a spiritual divinity. So, Akka Mahadevi went in search of that spiritual divinity. She accepted that spiritual divinity as her husband. So, he went in search of that husband, divine husband. She went towards Sri Shaila. On the way, she went to Basava Kalyana. At that time, she heard of Basava Kalyana. At that time, she heard of that Sharana movement and Allama Prabhu, Channa Basavanna, Siddharama, etc., etc. And yes, it was on the way towards Sri Shaila. She went to Basava Kalyana, the center of Sharana movement at that time. Of course, yes, she was in a naked position. No one believed her. She had to face the wrath of so many Sharanas. Anyhow, some of them heard of her. That is why their spiritual leader Allama Prabhu tested her with some questions. If she was in search of a divine husband, and if she was sacrificed everything, why she was in a stress? Of course, before entering into the Anubhava Mantapa, that is the hall of enlightenment, hall of experience, that Madiwala Matchudeva spread the cloths in order to welcome her. And yes, she knew he was a Sharana. He could not put her feet on the cloths he spread on the ground. So he took her in her hand and covered her body with that sari. Of course, it was simply a covering. Everyone observed that act of Akka Mahadevi. Especially the spiritual leader Allama noticed it. So he asked her, why is she clad that sari when she felt that there was nothing. Of course, Mahadevi replied to him that she had covered her body with the sari and with the hairs because the Sharanas should not be tempted by looking at his private parts. For that purpose, she covered it. And of course, they also told her the danger of searching the divine husband and going to Sri Shaila because there were wild animals. It was a thick forest. Especially even men were afraid to enter into the forest. And in such a position, being a girl of being a teenage girl, it was very dangerous to go alone to Sri Shaila. But anyhow, she replied them that no, she was not only one. His divine husband was there. Channamallikarjuna was there. So, where Channamallikarjuna was there, and Channamallikarjuna would protect her, that is why she did not need anyone to protect. Because she believed Channamallikarjuna, she kept her faith on Channamallikarjuna, and she considered Channamallikarjuna as her husband. Of course, it was a rare thing, Generally, in India, even today, woman is not allowed to be alone. If anyone tells a girl to see what is happened by the side of her house, automatically a girl will not go herself. She goes to that house carrying someone with her, or having a company of some girl with her. That is the tendency of a girl, that is the tendency of feminine gender in India. But in such a position, she went alone, removing her clothes and that too in a dress. That's why they were wondered. But finally, they were yielded to her determined mind, to her commitment. She stayed for some time in Basava Kalyana. She composed vachanas. She was a wandering bird. Her vachanas were not only vachanas, but they were lyrical poems. She had that rare gift. And as the time went on and on, one nice day she went towards that Shishaila. Of course, there she was unioned with his divine husband, Channamallikarjuna. It is said that Akka Mahadevi composed so many vachanas, but only 354 vachanas are available till now. There are so many vachanas which are not yet found. She was also written Paramarahasya, Trividi Yoganga Trividi, and other works. In addition to these vachanas, of course, Mahadevi's work, that is Paramarahasya, is not yet found. If it is found, things would have been different regarding the faith of her, regarding the thoughts of her. Because there she dwelled deeply in the Veerashaivism in that Paramarahasya. That is what some people opined. Anyhow, now we have these 354 vachanas, and as usual, Akka Mahadevi also used the signature at the end of each vachana. Her signature is Channamallikarjuna. Channa means beautiful, handsome. Mallika means it is a flower, a kind of a fragrant flower. And Arjuna means, stands for heroism, stands for leadership. So, Channa means handsome and beautiful. Mallika means jasmine flower. And of course, jasmine flower is very fragrant and very beautiful to see, and it symbolizes the purity of man's mind and body. So that is why usually the chastened women wear jasmines in their hair, especially married women who are chastened or worn these jasmine flowers because of its purity, because of its whiteness, which stands for purity. So anyhow, that Akka Mahadevi has used the signature of Channamallikarjuna, and that is the jasmine, that is the Lord jasmine as white. Of course, Akka Mahadevi was union with God at the age of 20, at the earliest age. Within 20 years, she bloomed like a flower and disappeared like a flash. Her contributions to Kannada literature are very great. So even today, so many scholars think of those contributions, think of those vachanas, and made a doctorate on her vachanas. So many vachanas of her have been translated into English and have been translated to in so many other languages. Especially E.K. Ramanujan, the linguist, translated the Rachanas and collected them in the book entitled Speaking of Shiva. There he used her signature Channamallikarjuna as white as jasmine. Of course, his translation is good, no doubt about it. If you look at his translations, you will come to know the poetic ability of Akka Mahadevi. Of course, I will read to you some 2-3 vachanas of Akka Mahadevi. Oh, twittering birds, don't you know, don't you know? Oh, swans on the lake shore, don't you know, don't you know? Oh, I singing coils, don't you know, don't you know? Oh, circling, swooping bees, don't you know, don't you know? Oh, peacocks in the caverns, don't you know, don't you know? Tell me if you know, where is he, my lord, white as jasmine? Of course, it is a vachana. It is a lyrical poem. Here Akka Mahadevi asks birds, swans, quails, bees, peacocks, and etc., whether they have seen, whether they know her husband Channamallikarjuna. He was white as jasmine. If they know him, tell her where she could find him. Of course, at that time, a woman composed this type of vachana at the 12th century of Common Era. In those days, generally, a woman could not read and write, but women like Akka Mahadevi is an exception to this. Of course, the words there are very simple. They show the intensity of love, the intensity of feeling of Akka Mahadevi towards Channamallikarjuna. And she went in search of him. Then we can see another vachana. It is a unique one. So I cite that vachana. I love the handsome one. He has no death, decay, nor form, no place or site, no end nor birthmarks. I love him, O mother. Listen. I love the beautiful one with no bond nor fear, no clan, no land, no landmarks for his beauty. So, my lord, white as jasmine is my husband. Take these husbands who die, decay, and feed them to your kitchen fires. See here, Akka Mahadevi expressed her feelings to her divine husband Channamallikarjuna. He was white as jasmine. He could not die. He could not have any form. He could not have any place. And he could not have any birthmarks. So, Akka Mahadevi loved such a person. He was omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. So, Akka Mahadevi was in love with such a person. So, Akka Mahadevi loved that one. She had no conditions, he had no conditions. He had no clan, no land, no landmarks. Even he was very beautiful. Because if a man has landlady and beauty, landlady and handsome qualities, automatically he could not be in a proper way. That is what we think. But here, that is not the case of Channamallikarjuna. He had all the qualities, but he was not spoiled as we think. He was pure. He was white as jasmine. So she expressed, "So my lord, white as jasmine is my husband. Take these husbands who die, decay, and feed them to your kitchen fires." So she did not want a husband who could die. She did not want to marry a person who could decay, and she did not want to marry a husband who could feed them all. So she wanted to feed such persons to the kitchen fire. If her husband is decayed one, that is the material that husband is earthly one, he would be decayed, he would be died, and he would be no more, he would withered away. So she did not want to marry such an earthly man. She did not want to marry such a person. She did not want to accept as her husband. In fact, she wanted to feed such a person to the kitchen fire. So, it shows to what extent Akka Mahadevi loved the divine husband, that is Channamallikarjuna. Her feelings are very intense. Her thoughts are very clear. The words are very rhythmic, and they are expressed with clarity. That is the greatness of Akka Mahadevi. And of course, these two vachanas are taken from A.K. Ramanujan's The Speaking of Shiva. He used white as jasmine for Channamallikarjuna. According to traditional grammar, proper nouns cannot be translated into other languages. That means proper nouns should be retained in the original language while translating to another language. But here, A.K. Ramanujan had also translated it with white as jasmine. He wanted to give more scope to the meaning of that word. He looked at the word semantically, and when we understand it with semantic symptoms, semantic things, automatically it reveals to us so many things. So, grammatically, it may not be that much of correct, but semantically it is exact one. But anyhow, here another translator has translated her vachana. That is, I cite it. If I feel hungry, there are always alms in town. If I feel thirsty, there are always lakes, wells, and streams. If I feel cold, there are always discarded clothes. If I feel sleepy, there are always abandoned temples. And as companion for my soul, I have you, O Channamallikarjuna. This is a translation by Vanamala Vishwanathan. Of course, it is simple. A human being has hunger, thirsty, cold, sleepy, etc., etc. For all these things, there are places, there are things, but as a companion, she would have the company of Channamallikarjuna. Here the point is, the translator retained the signature Channamallikarjuna as it is in original language Kannada. Of course, anyhow, these are different variations of translations. Both of them are correct. As per traditional grammar, retaining the proper noun is correct. But as far as structural linguistics, the expansion of meaning is very important, and that is also an exact one. Anyhow, some people opine that Akka Mahadevi was a feminist. She was just like a woman of America. No, Akka Mahadevi was not a feminist. She was feminine but not a feminist. When we say feminist, automatically we think that feminists are try to compare and try to be more than the masculinity. Of course, here Akka Mahadevi doesn't want to compete with men, but she wants to go beyond the earthly mundane things. That doesn't mean she is a feminist. Of course, she is a feminine, she represents the problems of women at that time, and even today some problems are there, and she represents the revolt against the suppression and oppression of women by the existing system of the society at that time, and that is why she voiced against that system but not against the masculine gender. So if we think that Akka Mahadevi is a feminist, it means the wrong understanding of the vachanas of Akka Mahadevi. So I can say that Akka Mahadevi was not a feminist. She was a feminine, she was soft, and her thoughts might not be soft as to others, but they are noble. The feelings are decent, etc., etc. So, Akka Mahadevi sometimes or most of the times becomes a model for our commitment to society, a model for spirituality. She would become a model to understand the existing system, and she becomes to be and to beyond the material world. Especially, we have to learn many things from Akka Mahadevi's compositions. So that is what we have to look into the vachanas composed by Akka Mahadevi. So, Kannada literary field is grateful to Akka Mahadevi for providing such a compact, thoughtful, heartfelt vachanas in those days. That too, being a woman, she composed such vachanas. That shows the greatness of Akka Mahadevi. So, dear friends, dear viewers, subscribe and share. See you in the next episode. Namaskar.